Hey y'all, it's Skylar Baker-Jordan, and I am back with Chapter 2 of Why Pro-Life, Caring for the Unborn and Their Mothers by Randy Alcorn. Alcorn. I think at the end of the last video I said Randy Acorn, so my apologies to our friend Randy here. To give you a quick rundown, I am a socialist, I am a leftist, and I am rabidly pro-choice, and Randy here is not. But we're going to have a dialogue, him in the book, and me commenting on it. So, Chapter 2, Pro-Woman or Pro-Child? My wife and I became involved in pro-life work out of concern for women who'd been devastated by abortion. In 1981, we opened our home to a pregnant teenage girl. I served on the board of one of the first pregnancy centers on the West Coast, offering help to pregnant women who were needy, confused, and desperate. That's nice. That's, you should help people. Our objective was to help women in every way possible, except probably to access an abortion. And the best way to help these women was to provide them alternatives to abortion. I don't know that I agree with that. As time went on, I became involved in pro-life education, political action, and peaceful nonviolent intervention outside abortion clinics. That's gross. I'm sorry, but protesting outside of an abortion clinic is gross. Those women are going to have a medical procedure. A lot of them are going to be traumatized by, whatever it is that brought them there. Not all of them, but enough of them. It's just ghoulish. It's not compassionate at all. It's really, really gross, and it should be called out as such. I don't think you can protest an abortion clinic and claim that you care about women. I don't. I think that it shows that you actually do not care for women at all, because at one of the most emotionally vulnerable points of a woman's life, you're there judging and condemning and making it much more difficult for her. That's awful. It's awful. Some pro-life ministries focus more on saving unborn children, others more on helping pregnant women. I think that if you want to save children, you should probably help pregnant women. I think that's probably the best way. I found both kinds of efforts to be vitally necessary and completely compatible. I'm sure you did. All right, this first section is called The Movement You May Not Know. Countless myths have been attached to the pro-life movement. One example is the oft-repeated statement, pro-lifers don't really care about pregnant women or about children once they're born. That's very true. And some of them, I think, do care. I've seen Catholics, for example, and it's usually Catholics, who have a remarkably consistent, sort of consistent life ethic, which is life should be valued and we should do what we can to support it. And so they're against abortion, but they're also against the death penalty, and they're for a robust social safety net so that women and children are actually fed and they have food and housing and clothing and the things they need in order to not just live but to thrive and to really make a go of it in our capitalist hellscape that we call a country. A lot of conservatives don't support that, though. If Randy does, great, but I've seen no indication that he does. A television reporter with cameras rolling approached me at a pro-life event and asked for my response to that accusation. I said, quote, "Well, my wife and I opened our home to a pregnant girl and paid her expenses while she lived with us. We supported her when she decided to give up the child for adoption. And since you ask, we give a substantial amount of our income to help poor women and children." I mean, good for you. But the problem is you can't help everyone, nor should you be expected to. And that's where we need a robust social safety net so that nobody falls through the cracks. I'm really glad that you helped this woman if that's what she wanted. If she didn't want to have an abortion, abortion. She wanted to give her baby up for adoption, and you were there to help her through that process, which can be a very, very upsetting and traumatic and difficult process. Even leaving out all the emotions, it's just a difficult process to sort of navigate the legal framework of, I imagine. So it's good that women have support for those kinds of things. You can't provide that support for everyone, and every woman deserves to be supported, not just the women you decide to help. Then I introduced her to a pastor friend standing next to me who, with his wife, had adopted 19 children, a number of them with Down syndrome and other special needs. Wow, that's admirable. The reporter signaled the cameraman to stop filming. I asked if she wanted to interview my friend. She shook her head and moved on. I would have wanted to interview that person. And in fact, if this was today, keep in mind this book was written in the early 2000s, but if that was today, that person would probably have their own reality show on TLC. The fact is this: thousands of pro-life organizations around the country and throughout the world provide free pregnancy tests, ultrasounds, counseling, support groups, childcare classes, financial management, education, babysitting, diapers, children's clothes, and housing. Okay, and I don't think that we should rely on charity to provide those things. I think those things should be provided by the state as a matter of community need. But I'm a socialist, so we're going to differ on that, you know. And part of that is because what women are you serving? You know, are you serving all women equally? Maybe Randy is. Certainly not all charities are, and you know that's the problem. The government serves, in an ideal world, everyone equally, whereas private charities do not. And I know this because a lot of private charities would turn away an LGBT person. You know, they would. A lot of private schools are technically charities, but they would, with completely legally, deny an LGBT student or the parents, you know, LGBT parents of a student, the right to attend their school. So I don't trust religions to be the moral arbiters of benefits in our society because they deny too many people. And I say that as a Christian. Thousands of pro-life organizations around the country and throughout the world provide free blah, 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 blah. Add to these tens of thousands of churches donating time, money, food, house repairs, and every other kind to help the needy pregnant women, single mothers, and low-income families. Countless pro-lifers adopt children. We've seen those creepy people with the, we'll adopt your baby sign. Ugh, no. Countless pro-lifers adopt children, open their homes, and volunteer to help children after they're born. The reason I'm upset with those women, or those people, by the way, is because women are not broodmares for you to take their child. Like, women should be able to decide for themselves whether they want to have that child in the first place. Together, these efforts comprise the single largest grassroots volunteer movement in history. I don't know if that's true or not. There's no footnotes in this book, so there's no way for me to know if the claims that he's asserting are true. I take that back. There are some notes there in the back, but they're not, I haven't seen any footnotes. Maybe I'm not paying it close enough attention. Yeah, there's one. There's no footnote for that claim, though, that it's the largest grassroots volunteer movement in history, but I don't want to be caught in a lie. There are footnotes. While those who offer abortions charge women for them, those who offer abortion alternatives give their assistance freely, lovingly, and almost entirely behind the scenes. That's really interesting that I don't know if Randy Alcorn is a capitalist or not, but considering I believe he is American, it's safe because most Americans are capitalists. I just think it's interesting that he's using charging, you know, and money and receiving money to provide an abortion as sort of a moral line of it delineates the pro-lifers from the pro-choicers. I wonder if anywhere else that he would say somebody making money for doing a job is less moral than somebody doing it for charity. You know, and again, they're doing very different things, but let's say helping women is what they're doing. I mean, I can't imagine that any other doctor he would criticize for taking money for performing a service. Now, I think that service should be free at the point of access for all women, and I think that we should nationalize healthcare so that healthcare across the board, not just abortion services, but all healthcare is free at the point of access. I wonder if Randy would agree with me on that, since apparently he doesn't believe in paying doctors. You would still get paid as a doctor if healthcare were a national service. I mean, it'd just be like the NHS. If you had universal healthcare, you'd still get paid. And Rand Paul's loony arguments that, you know, he would be forced to work for free or whatever is just such bollocks, because you could easily make the same argument about firefighters or police officers or teachers or any other sort of public employee. You know, nobody's forcing them to do that. They still choose to do that. Rand Paul's a Looney Tune. But we're not reading a Rand Paul book. We're reading a Randy Alcorn book. So let's get back to that. Contrary to some caricatures, these people are not just pro-birth, they are pro-life. I find absolutely no evidence for that. A lot of them are really pro-birth, and their advocacy stops when the child is born. But I commend anyone helping feed hungry babies or clothe cold babies or whatever it is. That's very good. You're doing God's work. Just, you shouldn't have to. They care about a child and her mother and are there to help them both, not only before birth, but after. Okay. Our national schizophrenia is the next subheading. Christ, I can only imagine what's about to come. Despite an even split among those calling themselves pro-choice and pro-life, again, I don't know if there is an even split, check the numbers, 2/3 of Americans say they believe abortion is quote-unquote morally wrong. There is a footnote here that backs up this claim. I'm not going to bother with it since it was 18 years ago. We will assume that his numbers are correct, that 2/3 of Americans say they believe abortion is morally wrong, and I believe that actually could be very true. How many people do you hear say, I'm not pro-abortion, but I am pro-choice? You know, they don't want to admit that they're okay with abortion. And so they try and frame it in this term of, well, it's the lesser of two evils. They're going to get abortions anyway, which is true, you know. But I don't like it. I don't really care. Like, I'm just going to level with you. I have no moral judgment towards abortion because at the end of the day, I think every woman and every man should have a right to decide what happens with their bodies. There are caveats to that. For example, jobs that force you to get vaccinated, you know, healthcare workers, for example. Well, yeah, because that's not just about your health, that's about the health of everyone around you. You know, I'm starting graduate school in the fall. I'm 36, and they are requiring that I show evidence of a chickenpox vaccine. I never had the chickenpox vaccine. I was too old to get it when it came out, and I'd already had the chickenpox by that point, so I didn't have it. So I may have to get the chickenpox vaccine, and that sucks. I don't want to get the chickenpox vaccine. I'm 36. I had it. But you know what? The school I'm attending has a duty of care not just to me, but to everyone else. And I believe that I have a duty of care not just to me, but to everyone else around me. Getting a vaccine that is proven safe is not the same as being forced to carry a baby to term. Because, you know, that vaccine is going to save my life. Having a baby could end my life. And so it would end my life because I'm a man and I'm not built to have a baby. But you know what I mean. It could end a woman's life. So that's an important point. Okay, some pro-life advocates have interpreted this to mean it's no longer necessary to argue that the unborn is human or that abortion is wrong. Instead, our emphasis should be on helping women to see that abortion isn't in their best interests. I emphatically agree we should help women with unwanted pregnancies see that abortion will hurt them, not help them. Many women believe that abortion is wrong, but that it's the least of evils. Bad as it is, they think it is still a better alternative to having a baby, raising a child, or surrendering a child for adoption. We must show them that while the other alternatives are challenging, abortion is the only one that kills an innocent person. It does not, because the baby is not a person. But that, we discussed in the last video, comes down to a philosophical debate on when life begins. And that is an unanswerable question, because everyone will have a different answer to that question. Precisely because it does so, that is, kill an innocent person, which I don't believe it does, it has by far the most negative consequences in a woman's life. I mean, no, forcing a woman to carry a child to term that kills her would have the most negative consequences in a woman's life, because it would end her life. And that's what it comes down to, is pregnancy is not without risk. Even in the West, with all of the marvels of modern medicine, women still die in childbirth, even in the United States. And I think if you're asking someone to risk their lives and their health for another person, they have to have a say in it. When you're asking them to do it for what I believe is not another person, but something that has the potential to become a person, that's even more repugnant. You can't do it. Women have to be able to make that choice for themselves, regardless of what you think about when life begins. Though certainly I will grant that if you believe that life begins the moment of conception, then it does make the question of abortion perhaps a little bit morally complicated compared to my position. But I still don't think you have the right to tell a woman what to do. However, many of the same people who believe unborns are human and that abortion is immoral nonetheless choose to have abortions and defend abortion as legitimate. This proves that they do not believe unborns are human beings in the same sense they believe 3-year-olds are human beings, because they're not. They're not. And I bet even Randy acknowledges that, because I bet that he would not demand child support for an unborn, but would expect a deadbeat dad to pay for a 3-year-old. We understand. Even anti-choicers, I think, intrinsically understand that there is a difference between a fetus and a living baby, a living child. They do. They get that. Otherwise, the ones who don't get that are the ones you see advocating for no exceptions. Rape and incest, too bad. Those people are true believers and that this is a person. But most anti-choicers will show some wiggle room. And in there, you understand that they don't believe their own talking points. And even the ones who do believe their own talking points, there's a cognitive dissonance, because I guarantee you, if you start asking about, the rights of these fetuses to, I don't know, count for a census, for example, they're not... they're going to say no. That's silly. Polls also indicate that many of the same people who believe abortion is immoral nonetheless believe it should remain legal. It's fair to assume that these people believe rape, kidnapping, child abuse, and murder are immoral, but they would not argue that rape and murder should be legal. This demonstrates a fundamental difference between what they mean by rape and murder being immoral and abortion being immoral. I mean, yeah, but I would argue that allowing weapons of war on the streets is immoral, but we're not banning AR-15s. No one who considers a preborn child a full-fledged person can rationally defend abortion's legality unless they also defend legalizing the killing of other human beings. That's true. That is, I think, a perfectly logically coherent statement. I mean, if you consider a preborn child a full-fledged person, then it is murder. I do not consider a preborn child a full-fledged person. At least not in the first and probably the second trimester either. In the third trimester, I think it gets a little bit trickier, and you get into some real gray area, but I'm sure we'll talk about that later. No one who considers a preborn child blah, 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 blah. After all, every argument for abortion that appeals to a mother's inconvenience, stress, or financial hardship can be made just as persuasively about her 12-year-old, her husband, or her parents. If that's the truth, you should probably get a new husband. In many cases, older children are more expensive and place greater demands on the mother than an unborn child. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't have children. If it is, leave it in the comments. Tell me what you think. But people immediately recognize these arguments are invalid when it comes to killing older children. Because, again, older children are alive, independent of their mothers. They're not dependent on their mother's body for nourishment and survival. If their mother decides for whatever reason that she doesn't want to be a mother anymore, she can give them up for adoption. We might judge her for it, but she can do that. That is her legal right. You can't ask somebody else to carry your fetus once it's already inside of you. Like, there's no such thing as a fetal transplant. Women often say that when they got abortions, they had no idea who was inside them. Some knew subconsciously they were carrying a child, but they latched onto dehumanizing pro-choice rhetoric. They now profoundly regret this. Yeah, because you've brainwashed them. They think of what they did as temporary insanity enabled by their well-intentioned but misguided friends or family. And again, if these women were anti-choice and went and had abortions, this is probably a way of rationalizing their decision and disassociating from it. They wish someone would have tried to talk them out of a choice that now haunts them. I don't know what to tell you. That's really sad. I hate that somebody would regret something that is, that heavy. But their regrets should not eliminate the rights of every other woman in the country. We should love and care for pregnant women who feel pressured toward abortion. We should also love women who've had abortions and do all that we can to help them recover from abortion's trauma. The ancient book of Proverbs says that the right choice is always wise and brings good consequences, while the wrong choice is always foolish and brings bad consequences. That's awfully simplistic, which is why the book of Proverbs and the book of Psalms are two of my least favorite books in the Bible. That, and I just really don't like poetry. The false dichotomy. It's never in anyone's best interest to kill a child. When a child is hurt by his mother, it brings harm not only to the child, but to her. It's impossible to separate a woman's welfare from her child's. You're getting dangerously close into, separate spheres and the cult of domesticity and this belief that women are, divinely created to be childbearers and nurturers and mothers, and that is their unique role on this earth. And the woman and the child are two different people. And yes, I think most mothers would be horrified and devastated if something happened to their child. I think that's absolutely true. I think most fathers would be horrified and devastated if something happened to their child. But I don't think that you can say that something hurting their child also hurts them, because that becomes a form, in this instance, the way it's being used here, it's a form of emotional blackmail and gaslighting to say having an abortion hurts women because it hurts their child, when, first of all, not every woman is going to agree with that. And second of all, not every person is going to agree that the aborted fetus is a child. It feels like gaslighting, and it feels manipulative. Maybe not gaslighting, maybe it feels manipulative is the word I'm looking for. Precisely because the unborn is a child, the consequence of killing him are severe. Again, I don't agree with that. It's the identity of the first victim, the child, that brings harm to the second victim, the mother. That's why we need to begin our treatment of abortion with the identity of the unborn. Okay, that's the end of chapter 2 and the end of section 1. I didn't realize. So section 1 was called The Basics, and it was 2 chapters long. So the next video we will begin section 2, which is called The Child. And we will read chapter 3, which is entitled, Is the Unborn Really a Human Being? That should be an interesting chapter, so you'll want to tune in for that video. But that's it for now. Until next time, my name is Skylar Baker-Jordan, and this has been Why Pro-Life? Caring for the Unborn and Their Mothers by Randy Alcorn. So if you want to pick up this book to read along, you can do that. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.